Good afternoon. Oh, that's loud. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the District of Sechelt, June 14th. The time is 3:03. And I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask if there are any declarations of conflict in council. Seeing none, any additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, can I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda? First and seconded? All in favor? That's carried. We, Mayor Henderson is away today and sends his regrets. And we have one item on our agenda. We have no appointments or delegations or new business. So we'll go to 5.1 regarding the UBCM meeting coming up in September and its related ministerial meetings and recommendations. And I will turn to Corporate Officer Olson for a little report.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. Just to provide a little bit of background information on the Union of BC Municipalities, it was formed over 100 years ago to provide a common voice for local government. Today, there are 189 municipalities that are members of the UBCM. The annual forum provides an opportunity for elected officials to collaborate on topics that impact local governments across our province. So by submitting resolutions to the forum for consideration, local governments like Sechelt are able to propose policies and make recommendations to improve how we live in BC. Provincial cabinet ministers are also available during this time, during the forum, to meet directly with municipalities to discuss key issues. So for the last few years, the District of Sechelt has collaborated with the town of Gibsons and the Sunshine Coast Regional District and Shishal Nation to make recommendations and advocate to provincial ministers on issues that impact the Sunshine Coast as a whole, as well as making resolutions and addressing topics for their individual municipalities. So previous ministerial topics have included archaeological permitting, support for mental health and addiction services, BC Ferries contract and service levels, long-term care planning for seniors, Highway 101 improvements, and of course, water licensing. Excuse me. Our neighbors are also in the process of determining which resolutions and meetings they would like to put forward for this year's forum, which will take place in September. And they may include such topics as provincial downloading, that's the transfer of responsibility for certain services to municipalities, gas tax guidelines, and that's the community building fund grants that municipalities get each year, provincial government support for docks, and urban interface fires. So we'll get confirmation on those probably closer to the deadline, but they are in discussion currently. So to date, our council has submitted 4 resolutions to our local area chapter of local governments, which is the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, which we refer to as AVICC. So those were endorsed by our local chapter and for a vote of all the municipalities in the province. And those topics included the property transfer tax sharing for local governments, call for improvements to provincial water licensing approvals, deferment program for local government parcel taxes and utility fees, and a call for support to meet provincial archaeological requirements. So this meeting here today provides our council with an opportunity to discuss the potential topics that may benefit from advocacy at the provincial level and to provide staff with direction. So for example, council could direct staff, or the committee could make a recommendation to direct staff to prepare a draft resolution that we could bring forward for the next regular council meeting. That would be next weekend on June 21st. And we would bring a draft that could then be finalized at that meeting, which gives us lots of time before the June 30th deadline. Likewise, a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole for council to direct staff to request a meeting with the provincial minister could come forward for endorsement next week on June 21st as well. So we're just here to talk about the kind of the bigger topics, and if there's anything council would like staff to do some research and bring forward any drafts, then we would look for a recommendation to act on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the deadline for the meeting request the 30th of June as well?
Yes, they're both the 30th.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, corporate officer. Now, does anybody, first of all, any of the absent members of council today, had they put anything forward knowing they weren't going to be here today?
No, I haven't received any topics in advance from our council.
Okay. All right, council, any thoughts, inspiration? Topic to discuss. Solar Shepherd.
I don't have specific resolutions in mind, but to my mind, going through the sort of top critical issues facing the community, I'm thinking BC housing is a top priority in terms of the community of safety
Issues.
issues that we're dealing with. The Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, where we're having any kind of conflict with the Sechelt Nation. We can discuss Ministry of Water, Resources, if the other councillors wish to. Ministry of Transportation. I have a list of sort of 8 or 9 ministries which touch upon issues that council's working on right now. And I could propose those in an email to staff with a suggested resolution if that helps move this along before June 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Inkster.
So what has been done in the past, so I'm not sure what the previous council did over the last few years, although I believe it was Team Sunshine Coast was the approach. And I'll speak to that in a second, if I may. The general approach was that council members would ask that we request through the staff and or the mayor to meet with particular ministries. And as Councillor Shepherd had mentioned, Modi, I would meet with them to talk about ferries, highways. Highways is always an issue. Ferries is always an issue. Improved service. What's your plan for that ferry we need? We're going to get the same probably answer, but I think we need to talk about it always and always lobby for it. Say we need one. And highway sweeping. I think that's one that we should be talking about with them, with the safety of the growing alternative transportation population up here. Housing, and then through which ministry that is, we can easily determine that through staff. Mental health, I would like to talk to them about mental health issues, and all that's some things we're talking about with our MLA, but I think we should go to the minister on that one. Those are 3 that I have, and we can be specific in the topics if need be, and then be very focused in the meeting. They enjoy that and they love it when we give them a document explaining our issues. So they walk away with the contact with us and also the document. So those are 3 that I have on those 3 issues that are really important: housing, mental health, and Modi. It's very standard, but we've gotten results by having those conversations. I'd love for them to come to us later with funding that comes from the province, and be honest, then they're sharing in it. The other one I should mention is the regional district has, as has been mentioned by the corporate officer, has a number of ideas and or approaches they want to make. And the indication I received from the chair and the committee, specifically the chair, though, is that the municipalities should request those meetings and work with them on those, and be with them at those meetings if we deem it necessary. So basically, those are 2 pieces to what I'm saying. There is what we need to do, and the fact that we need to get together with the regional district to go to the meetings they request us to be at.
Correct. So, to the corporate officer, is it fair to say that we might request 10 meetings and get 6? Like, we don't necessarily get all that we want. Is that correct?
That's correct. They don't accept every request for
Mhm.
sure. And we've seen in the past that if an issue that we are interested in talking about may touch on several different ministries, they actually coordinate themselves and may bring in more than one minister to address that topic.
And anything else? Councillor McLaughlin, did you have a list?
One thing about fire season, speaking to a local resident here about the possibility of closing logging roads during forest fire season. Apparently that used to be common and now I think it's not. So that might be something we could have revisited. Also, I believe there's a ferry route, Darren, you can correct me, called the Owl Route, which goes to Seashell and Langdale. And it's, if you arrange it properly, you can get a direct route and get a booking for that route. Now, L route.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, okay, so I don't know, I haven't been lucky enough to be on it,
Yeah.
but I think that's something I would like to see if we could explore that and use that as a more commonly and perhaps develop it more for the local residents. And, yeah. Another idea I have is to encourage municipal affairs with the Homes for People program is to encourage zoning around the elementary school for multi-family affordable homes, townhouses. That would, you know, it's something, if we can do homes for people throughout the province, throughout all municipalities, I think this is an idea I've had all along to keep schools sustainable and also to create more livable, walkable communities, especially for families and children. Again, regarding affordability for housing projects, I would like to see more deeply affordable housing projects for low income seniors, handicapped folks, and also for workers to help us build the zoning around the schools. Would also help with density around schools in all neighborhoods. It has occurred to me that BC housing applications don't have a requirement for limited assets of individuals making applications. So I think that should be something that's considered in revising who qualifies for social public housing. And we're also talking about we're getting infrastructure grants for parks and trails, and we have a lot of nice beach accesses here, but we also perhaps need some extra funding to provide parking for those beach accesses so that, you know, to use them for tourism, as people are disabled and need to be able to park close to those accesses so they can have some parking spots. And again, I don't know how we can do it, but I would like to learn more and encourage more use of community health networks to provide health services for specific groups of people, particularly I think for people with addictions, because addictions go across all economic and social levels, but the treatments pretty much are the same. And we could build local community health networks about that and around that. I think it would get rid of a lot of the stigma against, you know, addiction, but also against poverty, to realize that addiction is not necessarily due to poverty. Well, it might be, and poverty is not necessarily associated with addiction. So that we can kind of just basically help people in need more directly. So those are just some ideas that I have.
Thanks. Oh, back to you then, Councillor Inkster. That's fine.
One I forgot, sorry, was maybe the health ministry
Mhm.
to talk about what their plans are. Because we know that those will be coming vacant soon, or well, I'm not
Well,
sure what their
the-
plans.
That's happening at a local level, though, not a ministerial, but it's on the Ministry of Health is on my list
Mhm.
around more of the same.
What I'm
Maybe-
saying,
Yeah,
it's there.
not necessarily specific to those facilities, but needing more seniors care and different kinds of care. Not everybody, basically all we have is assisted living and complex care.
Mhm.
And there's a bunch of care needs that aren't addressed, that are forcing people really out of having nowhere else to go
Mhm.
into complex care when
Mhm.
they don't need to be there.
Okay.
So that we can get into the weeds, but I had everything down that you had. So so
Yeah.
housing, Modi, it's the same suspects.
Yeah.
BC Ferries, seniors care, and I see this in what Councillor McLaughlin has spoken about in detail would fall under those ministries. Forest fires, if the SRD is going forward with wanting to discuss
Mention the manager.
yeah, and urban interface fires, and we can maybe couple that into that discussion.
Mhm.
So I'm not necessarily hearing anything that's out of the ordinary. Housing, Modi, mental health and addictions.
Which is health ministry, right?
They're their own ministry now, I think.
Mm.
I think they separated.
Mhm.
BC Ferries, Ministry of Health.
Mhm.
Is and perhaps it's probably worthwhile to include MER as well. How many is that, corporate officer?
Let me just do a quick tally. Councillor Shepherd may have
Oh,
a
sorry.
question.
See, if you were sitting closer.
Point taken, Chair.
Yeah.
Just to throw onto that list as well, municipal affairs, I think. And who we've, I think their ministry, when we had the group of ministries come for an all-day session within the last month, I think that was one of the ministries that we found we had to deal with.
So much, yeah.
Yeah, so that might be worth it. And I'm not sure where Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, whether we've talked about mental health and addictions, but I'm not sure if the issues are going to spread over into the second one I mentioned. Thanks.
That's a good point. The only one that we haven't also talked about, which the corporate officer and I have been discussing, is ministry responsible for childcare. I had a meeting yesterday with a couple of advocates who have shared a resolution that they're seeking support for. And there was another item that we spoke of that I think that they have a resolution out there and it hasn't reached us yet. So those two will come to council next Wednesday. But so they are looking for support for that. Well, what they're looking to do is encourage the government to implement a wage grid for early childhood education. That one of the main problems is that they're paid pretty low for the success by instituting a wage grid. So they're asking the government to support that so that essentially the government would fund childcare providers at a greater level, and the childcare providers would be required to pay the same rate, a range of $30 to $40 an hour, I think, depending on what level they are and how many years of experience, et cetera, et cetera. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure who you spoke to, but I heard some of the information you were referencing at the labor discussion.
No, not at all. Had nothing to do with the labor group. It's the BC Childcare Advocacy Group,
Okay.
and they're the ones that put forth the $10 a day daycare. They've been around for 40 years.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. So there is some connection because labor is also pushing for higher wages for workers.
Mhm.
Well, as they normally would and should. So that's interesting because it's how do you pay for it? Is it more money from parents who are strapped?
No, it's more
Or
money from the
the
provincial
province.
government.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you and me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not, parents aren't being asked to, yes, corporate officers, comment.
Yeah, so you had asked approximately how many ministries we've
Mhm.
discussed requesting meetings with. My count is 10 if we include the childcare ministry and poverty reduction. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's possible if they look at the topics we want to address and see that it impacts several ministries, they may organize a group meeting with more than one minister for that as well, and we can explore that as we go.
Okay, Counselor Inkster.
We'll see what happens. Indicated 10, you think 6, I think 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
I'm confident, but I'm
Yeah.
just wanted to make the point for those that are new that you don't always get everything.
you don't always
you
get
ask
what you
for.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about this. I think we'll get 10, but because it's Seashell, why wouldn't you want to meet with us? Especially Adam, he's so friendly. But the thing is that it's speed dating, so it's 15 minutes. So it's not as if our whole convention will be spent meeting with ministers. It's 15 minutes of their time. So I'm enthusiastic. It's important.
Yeah. Counselor Shepherd, you're hilarious.
Just a question about specific projects that require funding. I'm thinking on Inlet Avenue of the, would that be BC Housing? Social Services, they're still looking for $3 million. I think they're short on funding. So would we appeal directly for that top up of funding at such a meeting? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't hurt to raise the issue in that type of situation. I believe doing a little bit more research just to see which avenues they've pursued already. And if there's something new, maybe we could bring to the table, that certainly would be a good item to advocate on behalf of.
Thank you.
If I
Yeah,
may,
go
through
ahead.
the chair, 10 ministries plus one Crown Corporation, if we would like to have a separate meeting with BC Housing or potentially request that BC Housing be included in a meeting with the Ministry of Housing and address
Either
multiple
way.
issues.
Yeah, that would be great. Sometimes we end up meeting not with ministers, but with staff. Good. Is that something we have to request, or is that a result of us asking for a minister meeting that we haven't gotten? And so they've bumped us down to staff.
I've seen it happen both ways where they've determined that the request is purely operational and they'll defer it to staff and schedule a meeting that way. On the other hand, if we are asking for a topic that is operational, we can ask to meet with their staff person that's included in the appointment book.
Okay. And I guess my last question to you is there anybody, is there anything that staff has put forward? There's so many of you here today. but there's some thought to that as well. I think we could take direction if there was anything that staff thought they would like us to have a discussion around.
I will defer to our acting CAO, but as far as I've heard that there haven't been any resolution drafts put forward at this time, and the topics that we've been discussing with the ministries have already been mentioned
Okay,
here. So
perfect. Yeah. Okay, so the process then, would this list come back to council then on the 21st? Go ahead.
Yes.
CAO.
Yes, that's the intention, yeah. Get council's direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion for us to
Yes, ideally, if we could have a recommendation from the committee that staff be directed to request meetings with the following ministries, that would be ideal. If you'd like, I can list them all.
Okay, I'll put forward a motion that the committee requests that staff seek appointments at UBCM with the following ministries.
Ministry of Indigenous Relations, Water, Land and Resources, Ministry of Transportation, Municipal Affairs, Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, Ministry of Forestry, and sorry, let's check the title of this one. Ministry of Children and Family Development. And sorry, I thought there was an education component in the name of that ministry, and poverty reduction.
Perfect,
Oh, as well as BC Housing.
perfect. Go ahead, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, look at that. Isn't daycare also tied to the Ministry of Education?
Yes, they do cross over, certainly. I think that the topics that the chair has raised are with the Ministry of Child and Family Development, but it wouldn't hurt to include education in the resolution or the recommendation, and then we have the ability to act on any of those.
Okay. Perfect.
Education.
Thank you for that, Councillor Inkster. Or are you seconding it? Okay. Any other question? All in favor? Carried. So is there anything else you need from us with regards to that?
As far as requesting meetings with ministers, our next steps will be to do a little bit of research and flesh out some descriptions that we will include on the agenda for next week for council to consider as we apply for those. And those can be refined and finalized by the last day, June 30th, when we submit those actual requests. And other than that, unless there are any of those topics where council would like to see a resolution come forward, then that's all we need at this time.
Okay. Does anybody have any resolutions in their back pocket at this point? No. Okay. Thank you for that. And I look forward to September. Okay, that's our only business of the day. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn and second and all in favor. And that's carried.